What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We conclude and finish our 2024 predictions for the upcoming 2024 college football season. And up next is the Stanford Cardinal. Yes, we conclude and finish our 2024 predictions. Stanford is the last Power 4 team as we finish up our team predictions for the 2024 season. So my thoughts on the Stanford team for 2024, I should say, looking back to last year, this team went 3-9 overall in their final year, of course, in the Pac-12. Of course, it was a pretty rough year for Stanford. You know, they had a first-year head coach and a very young team last season. So, of course, the Pac-12 was very tough, of course, last year. Now you look at this team for 2024, they transition over now to the ACC, so a different conference. And, of course, with all those players coming back from last year, you know, they're still quite young on both sides of the football, and also they don't really have the roster talent like they used to do. So Stanford going to be quite young once again this year, and again, I just don't really know how good this team is going to be. It's a second-year head coach, and of course, making a move to the ACC, we'll see how it plays out. But they do have a tough schedule in the non-conference, and then of course in the conference as well. So here is that schedule here for Stanford. Again, they were 3-9 last year in 2023. So let's go game by game now and give you a record prediction here for this Stanford team for 2024. And they start things off on a Friday night against another Power 4 team in TCU here on August 30th. This will be a home game here to start out the year for this Stanford team. TCU, I think, is going to be a lot better this year. You look at both sides of the football for them, I think they're going to have a really good defense. The offense could be pretty solid as well, but this game is on a Friday night. TCU has to travel out west in this one. We saw the time for this game. I believe it's going to be at 10:30 Eastern time. So the time for this one for TCU is going to be a really late game. Stanford kind of really used to playing out west and everything, so I think it's a very competitive game. I think it really goes either way. I think with a traveling thing for TCU, though, I think that's really going to affect them going into the first game of the season. And again, this is the first game of the year for both of these teams, so both teams probably will be sloppy here. Both teams probably will play really good defense, but I think this is a pretty tight matchup. I was really back and forth on this game, so with that being said, I think Stanford actually pulls off the win here to start off the season here against TCU. And again, it's not really just about both rosters. It's just because of this, traveling and everything for TCU, and plus playing on a Friday night. They do have time to prepare for this game, but again, with all the traveling and everything to go to a weeknight game as well, that's going to be a really big issue there for TCU. So I think Stanford wins that game in a close one. I got them starting off 1-0, and then they take care of business against Cal Poly the next week. So I got Stanford starting off 2-0, going into conference play. They'll play their first official ACC game against Syracuse here on the road on September 20th. So they'll play on a Friday night, of course, and this will be the second Friday night game here for Stanford. This game, they get a bye week before playing this game as well. I think Syracuse is going to be a pretty good team this year. Syracuse has a lot of production coming back. I think this team is very underrated. They also brought in some transfers to help them out. I know Stanford gets a bye week before playing this game. It really could help them out, but you'd rather have the bye week before going on the road to play Clemson. But again, Syracuse, that's a very tough place to play. Syracuse, I think is a definitely more better team here than Stanford is, and I think Syracuse is going to be pretty good this year. So I got Syracuse giving Stanford their first loss here of the season, so I got Stanford now dropping to 2-1. They play Clemson next here on the road on September 28th. Like I said, you probably want to have the bye week before going out to South Carolina here to play Clemson here on the road. That's a very tough place to play at Death Valley. No chance here for Stanford. I think Clemson wins this one fairly easily, so I got Stanford now dropping to 2-2. Next week they play Virginia Tech here at home on October 5th. Virginia Tech, a lot of experience coming back here for this team on both sides of the football. They have the most returning production coming back in the country, and again, I think the Hokies are going to be really good this year. Very tough game here for Stanford. I think Stanford comes out pretty, fired up for this one. I think they do have a chance to probably maybe pull off the upset, but I don't think it will be enough. Virginia Tech, I think, is definitely a more better team and definitely the more experienced team as well. So I think Virginia Tech is going to be really good this year, and I think they give Stanford their third loss of the season. So after a 2-0 start, they lose 3 games in a row, and this is where the schedule gets really tough for them. It actually was already tough since that Clemson game, but they played Notre Dame here out of the non-conference on the road on October 12th. Of course, a rivalry game. Anything can happen here in this game, but Notre Dame, I just don't think Stanford is really on Notre Dame's level. I know this is a rivalry game. Anything can happen here, but I think Notre Dame clearly is the better team here. They're potentially like a top 15 and maybe even a top 10 team as well in the preseason. So I think the Fighting Irish, and also they're playing at home. That's a very tough place to play. I'm going to go with Notre Dame here to get the win. So that drops now Stanford to 2-4. Next, they play SMU here at home on October 19th. This will be a very talented SMU team. They do have some playmakers coming over from the transfer portal, and definitely players that came to play for the Power Four and everything. SMU, of course, a newcomer coming up in the ACC and everything, so this could be a very interesting matchup for a while. I think SMU might start off slow, but SMU probably pulls away in the second half. They win this one by double digits, so I got Stanford now dropping to 2-5. Next game, they'll play Wake Forest at home here on October 26th. Wake Forest, I'm really concerned about their defense this year. I'm not really that high on the Demon Deacons this year. The offense is what I'm not really concerned about for Wake Forest. We know they're going to be really explosive on that side of the football, but I think Stanford's kind of desperate for a win here at this point. They're kind of desperate for their first conference win in the ACC as well, and I think they finally get it done here. I think this is a really close game. I'm going to go with Stanford here. They run the football in this game. That'll be their strategy to keep that Wake Forest offense off the field for as long as possible. So I think Stanford gets their first win here in the conference against Wake Forest here on October 26th. That puts their record now here at 3-5. Next, they'll play NC State here on the road on November 2nd. That's another tough game here on the road, playing NC State and everything. I think NC State's going to be a pretty decent team. I don't think Stanford really has a big shot in this one, just because it's on the road and everything, but you never know. Stanford might be better by this time going into the month of November, but I think NC State definitely clearly is the better team. So I'm going to go with the Wolfpack here to get the win. So I got Stanford now dropping to 3-6. They get their second bye week here this season. Their first bye week really actually comes rather early, and then their second bye week doesn't really come until late in the season. They'll play Louisville next year at home on November 16th. Now they get a bye week before playing this game. Definitely one of those trap games here for the Cardinals. I think Stanford gives Louisville a really slow start here in this one. It could be really close in the first half. I think second half, Louisville clearly is the better team. This Louisville team is definitely going to be a top 25 team this year, and definitely one of those top contenders to win the conference as well. I got to go with Louisville here in a close one, so I'm going to go with Stanford there getting the loss. So it won't be a bowl game this year as they drop to 3-7, and then after that, they'll play on the road here at California on November 23rd. Just done my prediction for this game a couple days ago. I think both of these teams are pretty even. You got two former Pac-12 teams going at it here in the, not in the last game of the regular season, surprisingly, but I think Cal is a much better team than Stanford. I think they're definitely a more better program than Stanford is, and they're definitely a little bit farther ahead of them as well. It is a close game. I'm going to go with Cal here to get the win. So I got Stanford losing to Cal here on the road on November 23rd. And then the final game, of course, San Jose State here on the road. Very interesting that they play San Jose State here on November 30th. And I got Stanford getting the win there. It won't be an easy game, obviously, but, San Jose State, I think they'll, obviously could be competitive for a while, but I think Stanford gets the win there. They're definitely the better team, but I got Stanford finishing with a record of 4-8, so not a big improvement from last year. But, Stanford, obviously, this is, a program that's still trying to figure things out. And they're also trying to head back in the right direction as well. But this is a very tough schedule. You got Clemson and Notre Dame both on the road. You got NC State on the road as well. So, yeah, this is a very tough schedule. They can go 3-9 if they lose to TCU at the beginning of the season. But I got them finishing 4-8. So that is my prediction here for Stanford for 2024. And that does complete my 2024 team prediction for all the Power 4 teams. Coming up next Monday, we'll have my conference standings and we'll have my conference championship predictions. And next Friday, I'll also give you my playoff predictions as well. So we're going to give you the standings, what the standings could look like based on my predictions for all the Power 4 teams. And then again, we'll, of course, give you my conference championship prediction as well. And then again, next Friday, we'll have my playoff predictions. So stay tuned for all those videos coming out next week. But that does it for my team predictions. Thank you guys so much for all the support here on these team predictions, and thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports channel.